Welcome, everybody. My name is Lisa Kaplowitz. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business. What we do is through education, opportunity, and thought leadership, we remove barriers, build community, and empower women with confidence and skills to succeed as leaders. I am so excited to bring this event together with my good friends and colleagues, championing her, how to be a highly effective male ally. I have with me today, in no particular order, Cheryl Stokes, a partner at Heidrick & Struggles. She is a member of the Heidrick Consulting practice and focuses on leadership, diversity, equity, inclusion, and culture shaping. Prior to Heidrick, she had leadership roles at a variety of companies and a variety of countries. Duke Corporate Education's European operations, Coca-Cola, Alcoa, General Motors, and she actually started out her career as an engineer. So thank you, Cheryl, for joining us. And we have Rick Green. He is also a partner at Heidrick & Struggles and leads the succession planning practice in North America. He focuses his work on CEO succession planning, board effectiveness, executive coaching, and has provided feedback and assessed more than 1,400 executives in 6 continents. He is a former chief human resources officer as well and launched the AWE program at Heidrick, Accelerating Women's Excellence. And he is a proud founding board member of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business. Thanks, Rick. Next, we have Katie Stratton. She is an innovative business leader with 15 plus years of sales, technology, and creative industry experience. She is a Facebook veteran, now Meta, as we all know it, and forges global and national partnerships with Fortune 500 restaurants, CPG companies, and beauty businesses. Prior to that, she was in the advertising industry as Saatchi & Saatchi. She is also a proud founding member of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business and a proud Rutgers University graduate as well. Finally, last but not least, we have Adam Feigenbaum. He is a senior advisor to Susquehanna Growth Equity. And in his role, he helps them invest. He helps the investing and operating teams identify new investment opportunities and collaborates with revenue organizations within their portfolio to build highly effective performing teams to accelerate that growth. Prior to that, he spent almost 20 years at iCIMS, a market-leading SaaS provider in the HR technology space, as their chief customer officer. He is the founder of Align GTM, offering consulting for businesses seeking to advance their go-to-market performance. And he is also a proud founding board member of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business and a proud Rutgers graduate as well. So thank you, everybody. Before getting in, I want to get a pulse of where people stand and what people think. Oh, we already started the poll. What does an effective ally behavior look like? What does it look, what is it, what kind of actions are they? One word, you can scan the QR code at the top, but how does an effective ally behave? We're looking for the behaviors here. Supportive, a champion, an individual. I love it. Team. These word clouds are really fun. An advocate. So as you see, allyship, and the word ally has many names. We are so happy, and I looked through the list, we have many men as well as women on here. And according to BCG, they did a study and it showed that among companies where men are actively involved in gender diversity, 96% of those companies report progress on gender equity and gender diversity. That's 3 times higher than companies where the men are not actively engaged. So we are so grateful and excited to hear stories of women and men and how they partner together to advance gender equity here. Now, for those of you that are on the phone, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of relationships, and we want to talk about action. How does it work? So type in within your personal relationships, if you have had a male ally, if you have been a male ally. An ally is really a umbrella term for champion, for advocate, for mentor, for sponsor, for accomplice. Who has initiated that relationship? Same poll. You can also scan the QR code at the top. Is it her? Is it him? Is it both of you? Or was it done at the company? Were there mentoring programs that were established? It could be any time within your career. It doesn't have to be currently. It could be any time within your experiences. What have you seen? And it looks like a lot of the times it's both. It doesn't work one way, which is what is really important and we want to highlight here as well. And we're going to give you strategies for him. How do you initiate that relationship with her? For her, how do you initiate that sponsor, that mentor with him? Awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and want to start out. And Cheryl, I want to ask you, because you are in the recruiting space as well. We talk about, in the human capital space, we talk a lot about allyship and having all these different words. And what I want to make clear to folks is mentoring and sponsoring, and they're very different and they're both needed. But can you give us a quick tutorial on what the difference is between mentorship and sponsorship to ground us?
Sure. Well, I have heard it said, a mentor talks with you, a sponsor talks about you. And that really encapsulates one of the key differences, where mentor is more of a coaching relationship where the person is giving you advice, being a sounding board, but a sponsor is being an advocate. They're using their political capital, they're using their knowledge of the business to help advocate for your advancement.
No, that's really helpful. And so now that we know that, let's start talking about these relationships, and because that's really what they are. Katie and Adam, Cheryl and Rick, these relationships where men are involved in helping advance women can happen organically, or they can happen more intentionally. Katie, I want to start with you. And you have to call the man the ally or the mentor or the sponsor. Men, you don't get to put the gold star on you, but we're happy to put it on when we see the action. So Katie, how did it evolve?
Yeah, so Adam and I have a very interesting story together in that we first met at iCIMS. My very first job out of college, Adam hired me and I worked on his team, and together we built the very first marketing department at iCIMS from the ground up. It was the very first role I ever had. And we started our relationship in that setting of him being my boss and hiring me. And over the years, it has evolved quite a bit to the point in which I had reached out to Adam after speaking with Lisa and the board to gauge his interest on becoming a founding member for the Center of Women in Business. And this is probably over a 15-year period, right? From that very first time that I met Adam in the interview room to reaching out to him to work together again at the center. And so I would say the first thing that I have experienced in male allyship in this relationship is just the full circle nature of having an ally and advocate and advocating on behalf of each other. But it started with Adam really verbalizing to me his belief in me at a very young age, which is something I think is really, really important for men to think about, right? I was 22, 23 years old. And Adam said to me that he could see me running a team at the company within a few years. And I think from that very moment, it instilled the confidence in me that yes, I can, because I had this allyship and this verbal confirmation, which I think is very, very important. And it started in doing the work together. And I know we'll dig into that a little bit more, Lisa, but I think in terms of how our story has gone and how it's worked, it has been a very mutually beneficial relationship, which I think are probably the most fruitful for everybody.
No, I love that. And Adam, so, she said, he said, how did the relationship begin, from your perspective?
Yeah, like Katie had mentioned, when we began at iSIMS, it was a very small company, probably at the time 20 or 30 employees. Again, very, very small. I was very early in my own leadership career, and I would like to take all the credit and have all this foresight that I was doing this to be a strong male ally. But the reality was is that we were a small growing business, and we needed to really rely on each other. Everybody needed to rely on each other in order for us to be successful. And when you're working in those smaller environments, you really do gravitate to those that bring the same drive and the same energy and the same passion for what you do. And Katie was certainly one of those people. And that was one of the reasons why I so heavily relied upon her. And eventually that turned into more of an allyship relationship, as we're discussing it in this conversation. But as Katie and I were discussing even before this discussion, I don't even think we realized it or thought of it as that at that point in time. That's just how organic it was. We both respected each other's work, respected each other's effort, and wanted to do more. And we were able to create some really wonderful things at iSIMS, and also then move on and do really wonderful things in our careers that had transpired since that time. But again, as we're discussed throughout the session here, there are a lot of twists and turns along the way and a lot of lessons learned. And I'm really fortunate that Katie looped back with me to give me the opportunity to work with the Center for Women in Business so that I could better understand some of the things that I did well in my career that maybe I didn't understand, or also some of those lost opportunities that I'm now very grateful to have the opportunity to be a little bit stronger at as I advance in my career from here.
I love that. Thank you. And I think those relationships that are best are when the mentor becomes the mentee, or the ally or the advocate becomes the one that is being allied or being advocated for. And that's happened multiple times in my career too. And it's so rewarding to see that. Cheryl and Rick, I'd love to hear how your relationship began and developed. Cheryl, do you want to start?
Sure. I was very fortunate to join our firm a little over 3 years ago when Rick was actually the CHRO. So as part of his normal role, he was meeting with me as a new partner and getting to know me. But I think we just had such a great connection in that first conversation. And I personally felt his genuine interest in me as a person and my career and my aspirations. And so Rick was very intentional in saying, hey, let's stay connected and, talk to me about the people that you're meeting. And so he expressed that interest, which I very happily took him up on, because, coming in to a firm in this particular industry where I've been in professional services, but not in a search firm oriented business that was expanding and had all this consulting, it was new for me. And so it was very helpful to know that Rick would be there as a sounding board and as an advocate. And, we'll explore more later, I know, wonderful opportunities to work together and do things that I think have just enriched our relationship.
Awesome. And Rick, Cheryl talks about it being intentional. So from your perspective, how did this whole relationship begin besides just, being in charge of talent and people in your role at the time?
Yeah, Lisa, Cheryl makes it easy, right? I mean, Cheryl makes it easy. We've wanted, Heidrick and Struggles started 70 years ago, kind of found the retained executive search industry in one office in Chicago, became this big global presence in executive recruiting. And for about 15 years, we've been looking to build our consulting capabilities. And we've had different partners and different teams that have joined who've made an important contribution. But Cheryl walked into my office in New York in the meeting that she was describing. And within about 5 minutes, I thought to myself, okay, that is what we've been looking for, right? Extremely high intellectual horsepower, tremendous energy and presence, confident, appears like somebody we could put in front of any board of directors or any CEO in the world, and she would just be extremely effective and comfortable. And so Cheryl really made it easy. I think the other part of it then, in terms of the follow-up, Cheryl talked a little bit about some conversations we had about navigating Heidrick and navigating learning executive search. The biggest thing for me that bonded us, we just opened up to each other quickly on a more personal level. We talked very early on about for different reasons and different experiences, but our respective commitment to and passion for diversity. We talked about family, and it just allowed us from there to really evolve in an extremely comfortable and extremely natural relationship. And I would say it's different in, I'll just highlight briefly, you mentioned AWE, Accelerating Women's Excellence, which is our global leadership excellence or leadership development program for female partners around the world. And I've been a sponsor in each of those, now going on our 4th cohort. Those relationships are a little bit different because they're assigned. And so they're real and they're productive, but there's kind of like a monthly call, there's kind of a cadence. And part of the bond that I think Cheryl and I have is because it just formed very organically. And it was just a very natural, comfortable connection.
Now, I think it's interesting. What I'm hearing from both groups of folks is both Cheryl and Katie didn't even see the potential that others saw in them. And, what we're going to talk about actions now. Adam and Rick saw something in them that they didn't even see in themselves, and then took action to make sure that that was not only developed, but known to other folks as well. When Adam and Rick, you guys, you were doing this, and we're going to talk about the actions in a second. Were either of you incented by your company? Did you have a mandate that you were supposed to sponsor or mentor or train? Was it part of your annual review? What was the motivation? Why'd you do it? Why'd you take the time to work with them?
I'll go first. No, so in either in the work with Katie or in the 18 plus years that I was with iCIMS, there was never anything directly that was motivating me to do this. There wasn't anything like in a performance review, an incentive. Things like mentorship were often discussed within the business, but it wasn't anything that was like personally motivating outside of what was personally motivating, which was to continue to work with really bright and talented people that you respected and you enjoyed working with every single day. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to invest my time in working with people like Katie and others throughout my career as well, whether they were male or female or you name it. These were just people that I personally enjoyed working with, and I wanted to invest my time and work with them to solve the problems that we're all trying to figure out as we were growing as a company and we were growing as a business. So it was one of the things I definitely appreciated specifically about working with Katie and some of the things that I personally sought out when I was looking to work closely with people in the business.
Great.
Yeah, Adam, thanks. I mean, for me, Lisa, again, as Cheryl said, at the time I was our firm's chief HR officer. So in answering your question, I had a responsibility and there was an expectation that I would meet certainly every new partner and as many new employees around the firm as possible. But my follow-up was different. And right. That's where I think Cheryl and I really connected, meaning as I would meet with any individual, I would try to see like where they could fit at the firm, where their potential might be, how I might be able to help them as a natural outgrowth of leading HR. I think in Cheryl's case, I just saw an exceptional and unique level of potential that really is what motivated me much more than any formal responsibility.
Yeah, and did you have that? You didn't have that same relationship. You talked to all the other partners, but with the other 40 to 50 partners that were promoted that year, did you have that same kind of?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in each case, in many cases, there was some form of follow-up, there was some form of connection, there was some form of probably more mentoring than sponsoring. And I think in Cheryl's case, I was just, and continue to be, just extremely motivated to just help create any opportunities that I can. For somebody who says it's a phenomenal talent. So it's as a parent, you never want to talk about one child over the other. So,
right.
As a head of HR, you never want to sort of say, I like one right. person better than the other. It's nothing to do with like, it just has to do with where you want to invest your time and where you think there's going to be a great return based on what somebody's going to be able to create and produce.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, let's talk about the pivotal moments in this relationship. Katie, let's start with you. What were some of the pivotal moments where Adam really stood up and was helpful in some of your decision making?
Yeah, there have been many, and I think as I share mine, it will transition really nicely into some of Adam's as well. From the start, I would say, he mentioned when I joined the company, it was very, very small, 20, 30 people. We were building this thing together for the first time. It was my first real job out of college. And I was given a tremendous amount of responsibility and autonomy. And I was asked to make decisions, present points of view, hire vendors, right? And obviously I had the support all the way up through the, CEO of the company. It wasn't like I was doing this in a silo, but the I think responsibility that Adam bestowed on me and the confidence to do this was a very pivotal moment very early in my career. And I think even more so, the fact that he recognized my worth, especially at such a young age. And I'm harping on this just because I think it's really important for male allies to think about how they can start early in helping women advocate through, because it makes a difference. And it did in my case, because the day that I resigned from iCIMS, Adam looked at me and said, "What would it take to make you stay?" And it caught me completely off guard, knocked my socks off, right? Because I was like, what do you, me? Me? So early stages in my career, and he shared with me, how he valued and the company valued me. And I shared with him why I was making a move into advertising and my ambitions that had led me to Meta, to run a team here. And he was fully supportive of that, 100% supportive. I left thinking, wow, I can really make a real mark in my career. And the confidence I don't think I knew at that point in time would be so pivotal to kind of catapult me 15 years later into running a sales team for one of the largest companies in the world, right? So that was a very, very pivotal moment. The fact that he asked me what it would take to make me stay so early in my career. And then I think as time went on, just organically continuing the relationship with Adam, it turned very much into more of a like mentor type relationship where we would check in with each other here and there. And we ended up reconnecting over our children being the same age and going to similar little, classes together, and literally reconnected on the floor of a gym for a children's gym, where he started then sharing back with me some of his ambitions and what he was up to, which I think would be actually a better coming from you, Adam. I know a pretty pivotal moment for you.
Yeah. Adam, even before you get there, I want to stay on the point when Katie said she was going to resign. We're in the middle of what's being deemed the Great Resignation right now. So how you behave, not just as a male to a woman, but in general, what is the behavior that somebody needs to take? What were the actions? Talk us through that moment from your perspective about what you did and how you were feeling when Katie came to you and said, "I think I'm ready to move on."
It was a terrible day. It was definitely a terrible day. Again, when Katie joined the business, I was an early manager, maybe not a first-time manager, but an early time manager in my career. And Katie, as I've described, and Katie has also described, she was definitely instrumental in what we were building and doing, and somebody that I definitely valued within the business. But I would also call that moment that Katie described as being pivotal for her in this relationship as also being pivotal for me, because I believe it was something that helped me better understand that I had a responsibility as a manager to a team that I was leading and to individuals that I was leading. But there was also a different responsibility or opportunity to have a responsibility to be an ally to those that I work with. And those can be synonymous, but they don't have to be synonymous. And as Katie brought the news of her intended resignation to me, I certainly didn't want her to leave, wanted her to stay. And we had the conversation that she outlined. But then I also realized in that conversation that as much as I wanted her to stay, she was making the right decision for her. It definitely was the right decision for her in terms of where she was going. And I needed to be supportive of that. That was an inflection point for me. I could have said, you know what, I'm going to double down and just go back into my iCIMS trench and, you know, Katie, good luck and move on with our lives. But it was at that point that I realized, like, no, Katie was somebody that I enjoyed. It was somebody that I really appreciated her work, somebody that maybe I would want to work with again at some point in the future. And who knows where paths are going to cross. And at that point, I would say I more purposefully chose to stay in contact with Katie and be a stronger ally. Again, even if I didn't think of it as an ally at the time, it was definitely a relationship that I wanted to maintain because I just had continued professional curiosity and interest on what Katie was up to, because I knew that she had such great talent and could go many places. And then I also knew that I was learning and exploring some different things, and who knows where those different paths end up crossing and intersecting. And as we ended up learning, you know, almost 20 years later, those really intersected in a really special place for both of us.
And that's great. I love it. I love when, you know, there's a question in the chat, you know, now that you have found success, you know, do you make it a point to be an ally for yourself, for other women and men as well? And, you know, we're going to talk about that in a second, that I'm a firm believer that kind acts beget kind acts. And, you know, it always comes back to you, and that's really important. And so we'll touch on that in a second. But before we get there, Cheryl and Rick, Cheryl, you know, can you talk to us? When we had some of the prep call, you had some really pivotal moments in this relationship. Can you talk through a couple of those for us?
Sure. And really they, for me, align in sort of three categories. One about just work and being successful, one about my own development and growth, and then the third more around purpose and the broader reason, the why for me. And, you know, there've been so many, and you know, unlike Katie, I was pretty not young when I joined Hydrick. I was in my early 50s, right? So I've had a career. This is, you know, a big move for me personally. And a pivotal moment was Rick really working with me to ensure that I could be successful in the context of what's important in our firm. And so, you know, in a firm like ours, your ability to win work and do great service for clients is important. And so Rick was, you know, one of the first people that reached out to me to partner on something that resulted in, you know, my name being shown in our internal document that shows you're winning work and you're growing the business. And that's important from a credibility perspective, because, you know, many people may come into organizations with potential, but having the ability to translate it into success in the context that's important in that organization is really important. And so Rick helped ensure that by working with me. Second, in terms of
Cheryl, can I just pause there for 1 second? Because you said something that's so poignant that I think it's lost on so many women. You are in a revenue generating role, and how important that is, that the value that you're giving to the company is making the company money. And that cannot be emphasized enough. So I just wanted to point that out, and having Rick say, hey, Cheryl is actually producing all this revenue for our company. She's valuable. That's the business case.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it cannot go unstated that, you know, in any kind of business, contributing to the core business is essential. So having an ally who can help you contribute to the core business is so powerful. But secondly, in terms of development, you know, Rick mentioned well, certainly I was a part of the second cohort, and being selected to is a great privilege in our firm. Not everybody is asked to be on and it's a recognition of partners who have the capacity to serve in broader leadership roles. And so from my lens, that's a sponsorship move where you're using your influence to say, I see potential in Cheryl, I see potential in this person to do something broader for our firm. And so that's another pivotal moment. And then the last thing around this broader purpose, you know, Rick mentioned that we bonded around our commitment and passion around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, one of the things that I do is I'm the national co-lead, as you know, Lisa, of our Professionals of Color Employee Resource Group. And I remember when I was asked to take on the role, I wasn't sure because I thought, I need to be doing more business. I need to be doing all these things. I've done that role in other places. And I talked to Rick and I said, should I do this? I mean, there's an opportunity. And he was so passionate and absolutely, you would serve our firm in such a way and you care about this. And so, why wouldn't you do that? And then finally, even building on that, I've recently joined our firm's consultant promotion committee. And again, on Rick's advice. And it's an honor to be a person now who's helping think about who are the next partners for our firm. And Rick's just allyship, sponsorship, and guidance in all those arenas have just been invaluable for me.
Whoops, sorry, they're mowing my lawn, so I'm muting myself at the same time. Always seems to happen, right? That's so I think those various points are so telling on so many different levels, both professionally and personally and purposefully. Rick, from your standpoint, were the moments the same? What were the pivotal moments from your?
Yeah, Lisa, the pivotal moments for me were that, and I can think of 4, 5, 6 top of mind right now. Every single time that I, in one way or another, was able to get Cheryl connected with an opportunity, she killed it. She didn't just deliver, she didn't just sort of show up, she killed it. So the client that she referred to was a long ago client of mine who, through the retired chair, we got reconnected with. I immediately thought, okay, Cheryl would be perfect for the kind of work that they're looking for. And it's a really good place for her to kind of get started. To be totally candid, Cheryl, I know you remember some of these conversations. The client was a little bit slower to get started than we hoped for. And there's probably 3 times like Pinker said, Cheryl, I'm sorry if this is taking a lot of your time. I'm sorry if I got you involved in this. If you want to just put it down, like, it's okay, we'll find something else. And Cheryl says, no, I think we can really sell something. Well, she ended up selling what was at the time one of the larger engagements that year. Cheryl, I think that was like 3 years ago. So I saw that and I thought, okay, she's ridiculously resilient on top of everything else. So then the next thing came up, and the next thing after that. One of the most important things that Cheryl did, and sort of not just in sort of our relationship, but really for our firm, was, after, to be honest, after the murder of George Floyd and sort of everything that ensued, we were a little bit lost culturally on how to handle it, like many of our clients were, like many other companies were. And Cheryl had visibility at that point to be asked basically by our CEO to lead conversations on race. And she did it in a way that was just got everyone talking and opening, and people were exceedingly emotional, but they were exceedingly real. And it was because of the tone that Cheryl set, the example she set, the facilitation skills that she brought, and the vulnerability she created. So again, Lisa, it's just like those pivotal moments for me are just seeing Cheryl deliver time and time and time again.
That's great. I love hearing that. Now, one of the things we want to talk about is that this is not just one-sided. And Katie, you've touched on that a little bit as well. But in what ways did you get value personally and professionally, right? What did you get personal, professional value out of this relationship? What did they provide to you? Rick, you talked a little bit about it from a firm standpoint, but do you want to elaborate?
Sure. On a more kind of parallel basis. Cheryl got me connected to what has become my largest client relationship. We do virtually all of their talent and consulting work. And Cheryl had been invited in by a few other partners early on and thought that there was some expertise I could provide. And it was because of Cheryl thinking of me that I got involved, and it's now turned into a great, kind of a really great account for me and for us. And I would say the other thing is that from time to time, Cheryl would just ping me and say, have you seen this? Have you thought about this? Do you know this person? And it's always just turned out to be very, very productive. and very meaningful. So, I mean, I think it's those kinds of things. I think it's the firm contribution is really important, but I think it's also just knowing that Cheryl valued our work together and continues to, that she's thinking of me and how she can help me as well.
No, I think that's great. And Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I would say from a like a internal corporate perspective, I think one of the biggest benefits that you get is the advancement of culture. If you're able to have people that are aligned with your values and aligned with your work ethic and what you're trying to accomplish, that's going to bring more people with that same sort of mentality into your organization, and that's going to allow you to succeed likely more quickly than you're able to do, because you have more people sort of amplifying your message. Also, I would say there's a similar message that goes in there around advocacy. Again, as a leader and you're trying to build an organization, you want people to have trust, faith, and confidence that they're joining your business or joining your team, and that they feel like they're going to be valued and successful. And knowing that you have strong advocates that are on that team that have worked with you and could speak about their personal experiences are definitely things that are of great value within the business. Outside of the business, Katie mentioned it a little bit earlier on. I was introduced to the Center for Women in Business because of Katie. She opened my eyes to it. I probably wouldn't have been aware of the program, first of all, and I probably wouldn't have thought very much about engaging with the program, mostly because I wouldn't have self-identified necessarily as a male ally. I kind of retroactively, I've been told and about different things I've done in order to support people, but in the time, I didn't really think of it as something I was doing purposefully. I was just sort of doing what I do within the business. I didn't think of it as anything different, special. I just thought that this is what people normally do if they're trying to lead and to build teams. And so it was really rewarding for me to learn from Katie what the relationship meant to her, and that she saw me as an ally, and thought that I would be a strong advocate for the program that we're building. And it's been incredibly valuable to me because I feel like I've learned so much, and I've been able to grow my own professional network through the work that we do at the center. And also to have opportunities like these to engage with larger audiences, to share a story, and to hopefully learn more from great advocates like Rick and Cheryl as well.
No, I think what's so important that's coming out of all of this, and Rick, you were invited into the board from somebody else as well. It's that direct invitation that opens up opportunities that we don't necessarily think of because of the networks that we're currently in. So by expanding your network, by having this diverse group of people, brings in potentially other clients, brings in other perspectives. We already know it increases the bottom line. There are tons of studies. If you can have a salient minority, then that 30% threshold, all of a sudden, business results increase, stock prices go up. And you just think differently. And so I think it's so important, especially when we think about customer bases. We don't have a homogeneous customer base for the most part. So it's so critical to have that talent. And, Adam and Rick, you both have talked about how it's improved your own social capital, because now you're recommending, you're advocating, you're sponsoring a really strong talent. So it makes your own personal talent look that much more attractive and impactful to your overall business. So I think that's something really meaningful. Now, in our last bit of time, what I wanted to focus on is I wanted to turn it to the woman. How do you find these allies, these sponsors, these mentors? And we're kind of using the term ally interchangeably with a lot of things, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it could mean mentor, it could mean sponsor, it could mean advocate, it could mean champion. But how do you find these folks to support you, to help advance you in your career? Cheryl, do you want to start?
Sure. So I guess my word of the day is intentionality. You do have to take time and think about, what do I aspire to do? Who's doing what I aspire to do? Who do I have a connection with? Who would I like to make a connection with? And then you have to have the courage to pursue it. Now, again, I was very fortunate in Rick's role when he was CHRO. I had the opportunity to meet him, but when he moved back into the consulting part of the business to be a colleague, well, then it still takes intentionality to keep connecting, to look for those opportunities to work together. And I guess I would stress some of the things that we saw in the word cloud, supportive, listening, advocacy, connection and relationship. It's not a transaction. And you do have to think about what is in it for the other person, because you want to contribute as much as you want to be contributed to.
No, I think that makes sense. And Katie, what advice do you have? How do you form that ask for
Yeah,
folks? How do you
so
make yourself stand out?
for me, it's always been all about having a shared experience with somebody. And as Cheryl said, I really being intentional about where I may want to have those shared experiences. And usually in the workplace, it's doing the work together. And so for Adam and I, it was literally rolling up sleeves and doing the work to build a company together. And then as we reconnected, build a board together, right? Join a committee together. And that's evolved into many different areas where we've been able to advocate on behalf of each other outside of just work and the board. Even within my own company, I take the approach of looking at what others are doing, where I'm interested in playing a role or maybe a person that I'd like to become closer with, and letting them know, raising my hand and just saying, hey, that's interesting to me. I would love to help you there. And there's never a lack of work. There is just never a lack of work at any company. So if someone's raising their hand to say, I'm interested in what you're doing and I'd like to help, usually they'll take you up on it. And I would say from what I've experienced, whether it's from men or women, quite frankly, it's when I get a chance to do that work with them, that person is then almost like a built-in advocate for me, because no matter what I want to do next, no matter what conversation or who I want to meet next, they're saying, as we talked about earlier, very publicly to their peers, to their leadership team, oh yes, I've worked with Katie. Katie helped me here. Katie did this, right? A lot of what Rick said about every time Cheryl took a project on, she just knocked it out of the park. So to me, it's all about a shared experience. And that doesn't have to always happen also within like a project at work. It could be a shared experience joining an ERG, right? It could be a shared experience, like I mentioned, Adam and I, again, reconnecting over just children the same age and parenting, right? Like there's many ways to do that together, but that's how I have always organically created these allies, found these allies, and in turn have done my best to give back and become an ally wherever I can.
I think that's great. And it makes sense, right? Like raise your hand. I think a lot of women are scared or concerned to ask or to raise your hand. And we're not saying, hey, will you be my mentor? Or will you be my sponsor? Because as my kids would say, that's really cringy. But ask to do the work, ask to work on a project with somebody that you know has influence, that you know has power, that you know is will advocate for you, and you would enjoy that experience and learn a lot from it. I want to flip the tables now to the men. So Fairy Godboss had a statistic, 88% of men want to help advance women, but over half don't know where to start. So I want to go pretty tactical for a second. What are some really easy things that as a man you can do? Rick, you're off mute, so I'm going to start with you first.
Yeah, Lisa, happy to. So one good starting point for the conversation can be to ask, what are her aspirations? What does she aspire to? I can point to a few examples of really super talented women in our firm who were at a level below partner when I worked with them. And I would comment to them and I would say, how come you're not a partner? Do you not want to be a partner? Do you not feel like there's how come you're not a partner? Because that's kind of the level at which you're performing and it's kind of where you belong. So I think a good starting point is to sort of talk about aspiration and to understand where professional life and personal life fit in together and how someone thinks about timing. And sometimes just asking that question can give someone the confidence or the reminder that they should be a partner, or they should be a senior vice president, or they should be the CEO, right? So I think just asking that question around aspirations is really important. I think a second one is a theme that we've talked about multiple times. I think all five of us have sort of referenced it, which is a reminder to her how great she is and how unique her skills are. And I guess that, if I'm again getting, Lisa, to your point, getting really tactical, be specific, right? Like go up and say, look, the things that I've watched you, I've seen you in meetings, or I've seen you on projects, or I've just seen you around the office. The things that stand out about you are you're really strategic, or you articulate issues in an incredible way that gets everyone else to understand it, or, you know, to Katie's point, you just deliver really well, right? And I think it's reinforcing that message that's really important. And then I guess the final thing I would say is balancing where you might think you could be most helpful with what she really wants and needs, and not creating pressure for someone, or undue pressure or expectation, making it just really comfortable to say, look, I hear you, I got it. You know, if you want to talk more, I can help you at some point. Let me know, because I'm all in and would want to contribute in any way to your success.
Those are such great points. The key one being listening to what she wants and not determining it for her. I think that's so important. Adam, what are some ways that you think are first steps for men who want to help advance women?
So I guess three things come to mind, and hopefully I'll remember all three things as I go through here. But for me, when we talk about how somebody started something, you start at the beginning. And by starting at the beginning, what I mean is, if you're a manager or you're responsible for hiring, make sure that you're hiring diverse teams. There are some very natural, very easy traps to sort of fall into as you're making hiring decisions, where you feel like you're going into a certain comfort level, or maybe you feel like somebody, maybe they look like you, or maybe they have a similar background to you, and you feel like, oh, then because they're like me, they're going to be perfect for this job that I'm now hiring for. But being purposeful and intentional about hiring diversity into your roles is a great first step, because when you want to do some of the other stuff, it isn't like you have to show up to the office and say, oh, today I want to be an ally. You don't have to make that sort of decision. If you're coming in and you're saying, I'm going to be very intentional about building out diverse teams, after that, just lead, be yourself, and be a strong leader. From there, I would also just be mindful. I mean, the Center for Women in Business does a great job on research. One of the research elements that continues to come to light is just the difference in the way that men and women specifically view their next job opportunities. We find that men tend to look at job opportunities and think about all the reasons why they are qualified for those positions. And women tend to look at job opportunities and tend to initially look at the reasons why they're not qualified for certain roles. And what unintentionally happens then is that more men will apply for positions than women, and then you end up with this continuing trend of imbalance when you're looking to create diverse hiring slates and trying to make those maybe more diverse hiring decisions. As an advocate, as an ally, I would encourage anybody to speak to people and encourage people to apply for positions, especially women to apply for positions. Make them aware that you think that they could accomplish those things. And if they express any sort of doubt, talk to them about that. Like Rick mentioned, certainly listen and work through those things and help her feel more confident in hopefully putting that first foot into the pool and putting herself out there to interview and hopefully get that next position. Third piece is a little bit outside of the office, or I guess very outside of the office. And for men who are looking to be advocates or allies, I personally believe that a significant part of that also has to begin at home. A lot of us have spouses that are also working. And in order for them to bring their best selves to work and do all the things that they want to do, there's a lot of things that need to take place at home that is very much in an unbalanced state in a typical scenario. I could speak for myself, pre-COVID, post-COVID, the amount of things that I've realized that kind of come up in the house that I just didn't even realize because I was at work, and things just all of a sudden got done. And then I was just exposed to all this stuff that, it was all getting done because my wife was doing it, and I just really had no awareness of, and I certainly wasn't participating in, has made me much more mindful about being more present and active for the things I'm doing at home. I'm certainly not a Boy Scout in all of those things, but I'm mindful of it at the very least. I'm trying to do better. And I think that that's an important part of being a strong male ally and advocate as well.
I think that's so important. And I am so happy you said that, because I was just going to go there. And I know Rick feels very strongly about this as well. He is actually heading up our male allies work stream here at the center as well. And Rick, I know you do a lot at home, as I'm talking to you a lot in your chauffeuring roles at home as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add to what Adam said?
Yeah, Lisa, be careful, because I think my wife Kate is actually watching the webinar. So please don't overstate my contribution. But yeah, I this summer, well, Lisa's referring to this summer, our son really got into tennis in a big way. He just finished his junior year in high school, and we got to spend a lot of time together, kind of driving around to tennis lessons in different parts of the state. But I think the other thing I was going to say, Adam, I'm so glad you raised this as well, because the other thing I was going to say is allyship at home can be with a spouse or with children. It can also be, like, for example, I talked to some of our partners at Hydric, some of our male partners who are really good allies. Like, what do you do? And so one of them gave the example that they introduce their young nieces to books related to STEM, as an example, to technology related or math related or other kind of concepts and ideas, even at a very young age. So I think, Adam, again, I'm so glad you raised this, because I think the allyship in the workplace is critical. And I think both in one's individual home, but even beyond that, there's so many ways to be a good ally that don't take a lot of work, but can really have a great long-term impact.
No, I think that's so important. And my partner's listening as well. He's done such a good job that he's been promoted from VP of Kitchens to EVP of Kitchens over Thanksgiving. So he has learned firsthand everything that has to get done in the home as well. And I think, Rick, your point is you don't have to have a partner and you don't have to have kids to be that ally, and leaving loudly at work to I'm taking, my cousin or my nephew or my niece or my son or my daughter to a game or to the doctor, I think is really, really important. And I know, Katie, you did something that I think was really critical during the pandemic with your husband as well. I think you had some sort of whiteboard or something. How did you guys divide all this stuff up? Because you have little kids.
Yeah, we have 3 little kids. We actually had 3 in diapers when the pandemic hit. So it was crazy at my house. Yeah, I mean, we basically just went through every single role and responsibility that went down in our household. And we listed it out in a big, long list. And it's a little scary to do it at first, but from there, we almost took the approach of, like, if I was whiteboarding at work, what are you passionate about? What am I passionate about? Turns out my husband is more passionate about laundry than me. And I was like, great, and then there were other things I was more passionate about that, he had been taking on that responsibility and not knowing. So to call housework passion is, a joke, but still it's, finding the places, that you can both contribute best. And it was being intentional on doing that. And now it's like, somewhat of a well-oiled machine of knowing who's doing what and when. And I have definitely felt the difference. And I think he has too.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And we did research at the Center for Women in Business during the pandemic and found that the more men do at home, the more productive and satisfied women are in their paid jobs. So it's a critical element to keep women in the workforce. I don't know who came up with the saying, I can do it all, or I can have it all. Nobody really meant to have all the housework or the childcare. I don't think that was the intention, because nobody wants that. So I think this was so productive. Hopefully folks got some great insights. I want to ask one more question before we leave, and I'm going to share my screen. One last one, because we're all about action here and impact. So what is one action, you can scan the QR code again, that you are going to take to champion her, that you learned on this last 55 minutes? What is one action that you can take to champion her? But I want to thank everybody, Adam, Katie, Cheryl, Rick, really, really great insight. Appreciate the stories because I think we learn more from them, and the tactical advice as well. And I want to thank all the women and the men for partnering with us, for listening, for trying to understand what we can all do to help advance women. So I wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday season. Be well and stay safe, and Happy New Year.